A woman who refuses to accept fake connections often finds herself standing alone. Not because she can't make friends, but because she refuses to stay in relationships that lack honesty and depth. In a world where most interactions are built on convenience, hidden motives, and unspoken expectations, choosing real connection over shallow approval is a quiet act of rebellion. It takes strength, awareness, and an unshakable sense of integrity. Many people build friendships out of need, not alignment. They bond over shared complaints, not shared values. They keep relationships not because they feel understood, but because they fear being alone. But when a woman stops playing that game, she quickly sees how fragile most social circles really are, built on gossip, personal gain, and unspoken obligations. She starts to notice the fake smiles, the conditional support, the silent rules about who she should be. And the moment she decides to walk away, resistance begins. Society tells us that being alone means being incomplete. We glorify social approval, confusing numbers for depth, and attention for connection. But the truth is, a woman who chooses authenticity over acceptance isn't cold. She's clear. She doesn't find joy in forced interactions. She doesn't shrink herself to belong. She doesn't compromise her peace just to keep company. This kind of woman unsettles people, not because she's hard to be around, but because she reminds them of what real strength looks like. She doesn't chase validation. She doesn't need permission to feel whole. And that kind of freedom makes others uncomfortable. It forces them to face their own insecurities, their own tendency to settle for relationships that feel empty. Instead of reflecting, they label her distant, cold, arrogant. But what they fail to see is that she isn't rejecting people. She's rejecting pretense. To live this way means making peace with solitude. It means understanding being alone isn't the same as being lonely, because some of the loneliest people in the world are surrounded by others. They laugh, they nod, they stay busy. But deep down, they feel unseen. Connection without depth is just noise. A woman who refuses fake connections understands this. She would rather sit quietly than talk just to fill the air. She'd rather grow than pretend. She invests her energy in learning, creating, healing, because she knows that fulfillment doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from being true. This doesn't mean she's closed off. In fact, it's the opposite. When she meets someone who values honesty over image, who speaks with sincerity instead of performance, she opens up fully. Her friendships may be few, but they're real. They're built on trust, not obligation. This kind of self-awareness takes courage. It means facing judgment without letting it define you. It means choosing solitude without mistaking it for emptiness. But the reward is profound, because when she finally surrounds herself with people, it's out of choice, not need. So if this feels like you, if you've ever felt out of place because you refuse to settle, know this: you're not alone. The path of authenticity isn't easy, but it's the one that leads to peace. Keep choosing depth over comfort. Keep choosing truth over approval. Let people misunderstand you. Let them talk. You weren't made to be understood by everyone. You were made to live in alignment with who you are. And when you walk with that kind of conviction, the right people will always find their way to you. The real ones will never ask you to be less than yourself. Sometimes she sits and watches the world go by. Something catches her eye, not because of how it looks, but because of how it moves. She tries to understand it, to see where it's going, but maybe she's not meant to. Maybe that's the point. When a woman chooses to walk alone, it's not because she can't find company. It's because she values her space, her mind, and her growth more than the noise of social expectations. She doesn't fear silence, she embraces it. She knows silence is where transformation begins. People often assume that a woman without a crowd must be lonely. But loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is a longing for what's missing. Solitude is the space where clarity appears. She's not avoiding people. She's discovering herself. She's selective not because she thinks she's better than others, but because she's learned her worth. She knows that the people in her life either lift her up or pull her down. And she's not willing to trade her peace just to belong. That's not arrogance, it's respect for herself. And that kind of self-respect is magnetic. It attracts those who are real and repels those who aren't. A woman with few friends isn't broken. She's simply uninterested in what's fake. She doesn't gossip. She doesn't pretend. She doesn't perform to please. She has no need to fill space with people who don't understand her. When she does let someone in, it's deep. It's real. It's built on truth and understanding. She spends her time learning, creating, exploring, building a world that fulfills her. She doesn't need constant validation to feel alive. Her worth isn't measured by who texts her back, who tags her, or who praises her online. She is whole on her own, and that's power. This kind of woman makes others uneasy, not because she's unkind, but because she reflects something honest. She's a mirror. She reminds people of what it looks like to be comfortable in your own company, and that's rare. So they project. They call her distant, cold, difficult. But she's not any of those things. She's free. She knows quality will always outweigh quantity. She seeks alignment, not approval. And if that means walking alone for a while, she'll do it. Because she'd rather walk in truth than sit in comfort surrounded by people who never really see her. So when you see a woman who walks through life with quiet confidence, don't mistake her calm for sadness. She's not missing out. She's just living differently. The world tells us we must always be connected, always surrounded, always available. But some of the most powerful people are those who've learned to be at peace with themselves. A woman who's whole on her own doesn't fear losing people. She knows the right ones will never ask her to shrink to fit in. If you're walking alone right now, don't rush to fill the silence. Let it shape you. Let it strengthen you. Let it show you who you are without the noise. Because when you learn to love your own company, you become unstoppable. And when the right people arrive, you'll know. They're not there to complete you. They're there to walk beside you. We're taught that having a large group of friends means we've made it. That being invited everywhere means we matter. But the truth is, there's incredible strength in standing on your own. There's real power in saying, I won't settle for relationships that don't align with who I am. Because when a woman decides to only accept genuine connection, something shifts. She becomes magnetic. She carries a quiet confidence that people can't ignore. She walks into a room, not seeking attention, not speaking the loudest, yet people notice her. Because she knows who she is. And in a world where so many people are pretending, that kind of authenticity is rare. So if you're a woman who finds herself without many friends, ask yourself this: is it because you're hard to love? Or because you refuse to participate in relationships that feel shallow? Is it because you push people away? Or because you've learned that being alone is better than being surrounded by people who don't really see you? If it's the latter, understand this. You're not alone. You're simply in a season of choosing yourself. And that's not weakness. That's power. Instead of asking, why don't I have more friends? Ask, am I being true to myself? Because when you stay true to who you are, the right people find you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but when they come, they'll be the kind who don't just fill space. They'll add value to your life. Until then, be your own best company. Because the woman who is at peace in her own solitude will never settle for anything less than real. There's a certain kind of woman who moves through life with an invisible shield. Not because she's cold or unapproachable, but because she's learned, sometimes through pain, sometimes through growth, that not everyone deserves access to her. Because of that, she might not have many friends. People often misread her. They think she's distant or uninterested. They label her as too independent. But what they miss is that she has spent years learning the difference between being surrounded and being understood. She knows that company doesn't equal connection. She's not searching for people to simply fill her time. She's searching for depth. One reason she might walk alone is because she has high emotional standards. Not unrealistic ones, but ones that demand honesty, respect, and depth. She doesn't entertain friendships that drain her. She won't stay in relationships that force her to shrink or silence her truth just to keep peace. Let's be honest, most social circles run on unspoken rules. Rules like, don't challenge the group, keep it light, pretend everything's fine. But this woman, she doesn't play by those rules. She won't fake laughs at things that go against her values. She won't keep friendships that feel more like performances than real connection. And when you live like that, when you refuse anything less than authenticity, you naturally lose a lot of people. Not because you push them away, but because they were never meant to stay. And that's where it gets hard. Because in a world that glorifies being liked, standing alone can look like failure. It can feel like you're the problem. Society tells us the more friends we have, the more valuable we are. That being well liked equals success. But what if that's wrong? What if real success is measured by the quality of the few who truly see you? When a woman refuses to lower her standards just to keep people around, she builds something rare, inner strength. She learns to enjoy her own company. She gets clear about who she is, what she wants, and what she will and won't accept. And when the right people finally show up, the ones who see her truth, those relationships are solid. This isn't just theory, it's real life. This woman walks into a room and doesn't look for validation. She's okay being on the edge of the crowd if it means staying honest. She chooses silence over forced conversation. She'd rather spend a Friday night reading, reflecting, growing, than sit in a room where she feels unseen. And here's the thing, she isn't lonely. She's full. Because she's built a life that doesn't rely on constant noise. She's learned to be enough for herself. And that's a kind of power many never experience. Does that mean she'll never have deep friendships? Not at all. In fact, the opposite. When a woman reaches this level of self-awareness, she starts attracting people who match her depth. She stops wasting time on convenient or shallow connections. Instead, she makes room for the kind that matter, the ones where she doesn't need to shrink to belong. That's the shift. She doesn't chase connection anymore. She lets it find her. She doesn't mold herself to fit in. She lets the right people meet her where she is. And when that happens, those relationships last. So if you ever wonder why you don't have many friends, ask yourself, is it because you're unworthy of connection or because you refuse to settle for anything fake? There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Between solitude and isolation, the woman who understands that difference carries an unshakable confidence. She knows that real connection is never forced, never begged for, never built on pretending. It's what remains when you stop accepting less than what you deserve. There's a kind of woman who has always felt a little different. Not superior, just separate. She sees the world differently. She doesn't play the game of seeking approval. She isn't impressed by status, and she doesn't need to prove her worth in rooms that prize appearance over truth. Because of this, she might walk alone. People might say she's difficult, closed off, or too independent. But what they don't see is that she craves connection, just not the kind that lives on the surface. She's not looking for friendships built on convenience or history. She's grown past relationships that exist out of habit. She knows that real friendship isn't about how long someone's been in your life. It's about alignment. Think about that. How many people do you still keep around just because it's easier than letting go? How many times have you ignored that quiet voice telling you someone no longer fits where you're going? The woman who stands alone isn't disconnected. She's intentional. She knows that the relationships in her life should lift her, not drain her. And if they don't, she lets them go, not with anger, but with peace. She simply stops watering what no longer grows. Yes, that means fewer people. Yes, that means lonely moments. But what she gains in return is freedom, peace, clarity, and the space to become who she's meant to be. Real strength isn't about enduring what hurts you. It's about knowing when to walk away. And when she does, people will misunderstand her. They'll say she's changed. They'll call her cold. They'll make her feel like she's wrong for protecting her peace. But growth always costs something. You can't become who you're meant to be while holding on to everyone you've ever known. Some friendships are lessons, not lifelong contracts. And when you stop forcing what's already finished, you make space for what's real, for the kind of people who see you, challenge you, and bring out your best. So if you find yourself standing alone, remember, it's not because you're unworthy. It's because you've grown too much to stay where you were. You're not empty. You're making room. Because the woman who understands this truth, she's never truly alone. She's simply creating space for what truly belongs in her life. People often assume a woman without friends must be lonely, that she sits in her quiet home, wishing for connection. But what if she's not lonely at all? What if she's free? What if she's not lacking, but thriving? Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They fill every space with noise, messages, distractions, endless plans, because stillness scares them. They believe that being constantly surrounded means they matter. But the woman who's at peace in her solitude lives differently. She knows that quiet isn't empty, it's full of truth. In the stillness, she learns who she really is. She rediscovers her voice, her purpose, her worth. And that's what makes her untouchable. Because a woman who is at peace in her own company doesn't look for approval from the world around her. She doesn't need a crowd to remind her she's enough. She already knows it. And that kind of quiet confidence is rare. It's powerful. It unsettles people because it challenges what's normal. Think about it. How often do people build friendships out of convenience instead of real connection? How many times do we stay surrounded by noise just to avoid hearing our own thoughts? Most people don't even notice they're doing it. They call it being social. They call it having a circle. But if you take all that away, how many truly like who they are when they're alone? The woman who has mastered solitude does. She's taken time to build a life that she enjoys, whether someone is in it or not. She doesn't need noise to feel alive. She creates meaning on her own terms. She invests in what matters, her passions, her growth, her evolution. She doesn't wait for anyone to bring joy or purpose in her life. She becomes it herself. And that makes her powerful. Because when you're content on your own, no one can manipulate you. You don't tolerate disrespect just to keep people close. You don't hold on to shallow friendships that drain you more than they fill you. You don't stay in spaces where you're unseen or undervalued. That's why she has fewer people around her, not because she's unlikable, but because she refuses to settle. She won't lower standards to fit in. She won't shrink herself to make others comfortable. She won't give her time and energy to those who haven't earned it. And yes, that means she walks alone sometimes. But she would rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded by people who can't see her worth. Society teaches women that their value is tied to their relationships. that they should always be nurturing, always available, always surrounded by others. But the truth is, a woman's strength isn't measured by how many people she has around her. It's measured by her ability to stand strong in her own power, even if that means standing alone. And here's the truth: most people don't want to face. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Not everyone deserves your energy. The more you grow, the fewer people will truly align with your path. And that's not something to fear. It's a sign of transformation. It means you're choosing depth over distraction, authenticity over approval, peace over pressure. So if you find yourself alone, don't assume something's wrong. Don't let the world tell you solitude is weakness. Because the woman who's truly powerful doesn't need a crowd to prove it. She carries her power wherever she goes. People don't talk about it enough. When a woman stops conforming, she often stands alone. But that doesn't mean she's lonely. A woman without a crowd isn't empty. Usually it's because she refuses to play into the small talk and noise that most people settle for. She's not drawn to gossip or meaningless chatter. She's not living for likes or validation. She values depth, not distraction. And that makes others uncomfortable. Because most people connect through shared complaints, through mutual frustration, through staying stuck together. They call it friendship, but often it's just avoidance. They stay in circles that drain them just so they don't have to face silence. But she's different. She cuts ties when the energy feels wrong. She doesn't hold on to friendships out of habit. If a relationship doesn't add meaning to her life, she lets it go, not with anger, but with clarity. That's rare. Because most people fear being alone. They cling to what's familiar, even if it costs them peace. She doesn't. She would rather walk alone than walk with people who don't align with her values. She would rather trust herself than depend on people who don't show up for her. She would rather invest in her own growth than pour into empty connections. That's why she moves differently. She's not cold. She's conscious. She chooses peace over noise, authenticity over popularity, presence over performance. And yes, people will call her distant or difficult. But the truth is, she's simply done pretending, done performing, done fitting into spaces that were never meant for her. She doesn't chase attention. She attracts connection. She doesn't beg to be included. People either recognize her value or they don't. And she's fine either way. Because she's built something most people never do: a solid relationship with herself. She doesn't need anyone to tell her she's enough. She already knows. That kind of confidence, it's intimidating because most people haven't built it. Most people have never learned how to sit with themselves without distraction. They spend their whole lives trying to blend in, while she has chosen to stand out simply by being real. So if you've ever felt like you don't fit in, if your circle feels small, if you've ever wondered why you walk a different path, understand this: it's not weakness, it's strength. The woman who walks alone isn't lacking. She's thriving. She's choosing herself. And that choice, that decision to live by your own values, even when it's uncomfortable, that's power. The kind of power most people will never understand. Because solitude isn't emptiness, it's mastery. A woman who's comfortable with herself has unlocked something most people spend their whole lives chasing: peace without permission. She doesn't mold herself to fit expectations. She doesn't twist her truth to make others comfortable. And that confuses people. Because we've been taught that our worth is measured by how many people surround us. But what if that's wrong? What if the woman who stands apart has simply found a deeper truth? That real power doesn't come from how many people know your name, but from how deeply you know yourself. And she knows herself. She's spent time in reflection. She's faced her fears. She's learned to sit with her thoughts instead of running from them. She's built self-trust so strong that she doesn't need a second opinion to know what's right. That kind of peace is rare, and it's the reason she shines. Because she's not avoiding the world, she's building her own. One built on clarity, confidence, and purpose. She knows the right people will find her. The right energy will meet her where she is. And until then, she'll keep walking her path. Not alone, but whole. Because being selective isn't isolation, it's strength, it's awareness, it's wisdom. And when you reach that place, where you no longer chase belonging, but create it from within, that's when everything changes.